The smoke alarm wasn't going off because of the barbecue. It was going off because Karen had just set fire to the HOA bylaws she'd been waving around 30 seconds earlier, and now she was standing in my backyard, flames licking at her manicured fingers, her face twisted with rage as she screamed, "You want to see what breaking the rules really looks like?" What started as a simple neighborhood barbecue was about to become the most expensive mistake of her life. She had no idea that my security cameras had been recording everything, including the confession that would destroy her. Sign of trouble came at exactly 11:47 a.m., when Marcus Chen spotted the white Lexus prowling his street like a shark circling prey. He was standing on his back deck, seasoning the ribs he'd been marinating since dawn, when the car made its third slow pass in front of his house. Through the morning haze, he could see the driver's silhouette rigid posture, phone pressed to ear, gesturing wildly at his property. "Here we go," Marcus muttered, recognizing the vehicle. Karen Whitmore, HOA board president, neighborhood busybody, and the woman who'd made it her personal mission to turn their quiet suburban street into her own private fiefdom. His wife Sarah emerged from the sliding glass door, carrying a tray of corn on the cob. "Was that Karen's car? I just saw," she asked, setting the tray down on their outdoor table. "Third time this morning. Fourth, actually." Marcus adjusted the temperature on his smoker, a beautiful offset unit he'd built himself from a reclaimed propane tank. "She's probably taking pictures again." "Of what? We're not doing anything wrong." Marcus had been asking himself the same question for the past 3 months, ever since Karen had appointed herself as the unofficial enforcer of every HOA rule. It had started with a citation for leaving his garbage cans out 20 minutes past the designated pickup time. Then came the complaint about his mailbox being not standard, despite being identical to every other mailbox on the block. Last week, she'd sent a formal letter claiming his grass was 3/4 of an inch too long, complete with photographs and measurements. "She'll find something," Marcus said. "She always does." The Lexus finally parked 2 houses down, and Karen emerged like a general surveying a battlefield. She was dressed in her usual uniform, pressed khakis, polo shirt, and a clipboard that seemed permanently attached to her left hand. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a ponytail so tight it looked painful, and she wore the expression of someone who'd just discovered her neighbors were running a meth lab. "Incoming," Sarah warned, disappearing back inside. Marcus watched Karen march up his driveway with the determination of a woman on a mission. She paused at the gate to his backyard, pulling out her phone to snap several photos of his setup. The smoker was positioned safely on his concrete patio, well away from any structures. The tables were arranged neatly on his deck. Everything was clean, organized, and entirely within the boundaries of his own property. "Excuse me," Karen called out, not bothering with pleasantries. "I need to speak with you about this ... situation." "Good morning, Karen." Marcus didn't look up from his ribs. What situation would that be? "Don't play dumb with me, Marcus. You know exactly what I'm talking about." She brandished her clipboard like a weapon. "This barbecue, this whole outdoor cooking operation you've got going here, it's called having lunch in my own backyard. Last I checked, that wasn't illegal." Karen's eyes narrowed. "It is when you're violating multiple HOA regulations. Open flames, excessive smoke, potential fire hazards. Show me the regulation that says I can't barbecue in my own yard." Section 4.7 of the HOA bylaws clearly states that no open flames or combustible materials are permitted on residential property without prior written approval from the board. Karen flipped through her clipboard with theatrical efficiency. Section 6.2 prohibits any activity that creates excessive smoke or odor that might disturb neighboring properties. And Section 8.1 requires advance notice for any outdoor gathering. Of more than immediate family members, Marcus finally turned to face her, his patience wearing thin. "Karen, I've read the bylaws, cover to cover, twice. None of those sections exist." "Of course they exist. I'm looking right at them." "Then show me." Karen clutched her clipboard protectively. "I don't have to prove anything to you. I'm the board president, and I'm telling you that what you're doing is in violation of community standards, community standards." Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Karen, I've lived in this neighborhood for 8 years. I've had dozens of barbecues in this exact same spot. Never once has anyone complained." "Well, I'm complaining." "Now, and as board president, My complaints carry significant weight. The sliding door opened again, and Sarah reappeared with a stack of plates. Behind her came their friends, Tom and Lisa Rodriguez from down the street, the Johnsons from next door, and Mike Patel, who lived directly across from Karen. Them were carrying side dishes and drinks, settling in for what they'd planned as a relaxing Saturday afternoon. Karen's face flushed red as she realized the gathering was larger than she'd anticipated. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're hosting a party without proper permits." "It's not a party," Lisa Rodriguez interjected. "It's 6 people eating lunch." "6 people plus children," Karen shot back, noticing the Johnson kids kicking a soccer ball in the corner of the yard. "That's a gathering requiring notification under Section 8.1. Karen," Tom Rodriguez said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd dealt with her before. "There is no Section 8.1. There's no permit required for having friends over for lunch." "You're making this up. How dare you accuse me of prove it?" Mike Patel interrupted. He was a lawyer, and his courtroom voice cut through Karen's bluster. "Like a blade, show us the actual bylaw. Page number, subsection, exact wording." Karen's grip on her clipboard tightened. "I don't have to prove anything to any of you. The board has spoken, and this gathering is in violation of multiple regulations." "What board?" Sarah asked. "You mean the board that consists of you, Mrs. Patterson, who moved to Florida 6 months ago, and Bob Stevens, who hasn't attended a meeting in 2 years. The board is a legitimate governing body." "The board is you," Marcus said flatly. "Just you, playing dictator in your own head." Face went from red to purple. "I am trying to maintain property values and community standards, something you people clearly don't understand or appreciate." "Community standards," Tom repeated. "You mean like the time you tried to ban children from playing in their own front yards because the noise was excessive? Or when you demanded that Mrs. Chen paint her fence white because brown was aesthetically displeasing? Or when you called the police on the Hendersons for having a garage sale without a permit that doesn't exist," Lisa added. "Or last month, when you sent a formal complaint to the city about my vegetable garden being a health hazard," Mike said. "Remember that? When the city inspector came out, he said it was one of the most well-maintained gardens he'd ever seen." Karen's hands were shaking now, but whether from rage or embarrassment, Marcus couldn't tell. "All of you are going to regret this. I have authority in this neighborhood, and I will use it." "What authority?" Sarah asked. "You're not elected. You're not appointed. You're just someone who decided to call herself board president because no one else wanted to deal with your nonsense." "I am the duly elected president of the Willowbrook HOA. "Elected by who?" Mike demanded. "Show us the election records. Show us the meeting minutes. Show us any documentation that proves you have any authority whatsoever." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. For a moment, Marcus almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "The fact is," Mike continued, "you've been harassing every family in this neighborhood for months, filing false complaints, making up regulations, threatening people with fines and liens that you have no legal authority to impose. That's not community leadership, Karen. That's harassment. It's extortion," Tom added. "You've been trying to collect money from people, based on fake violations." Karen's composure finally cracked completely. "Fake violations. You want to see fake violations? I'll show you what a real violation looks like." She marched toward the smoker, her clipboard forgotten on the ground. "This is a fire hazard. This is dangerous. This is exactly the kind of irresponsible behavior that puts everyone at risk." Karen don't Marcus started, but she was already grabbing the stack of HOA bylaws she'd been carrying, the ones she'd been waving around and quoting from. "You want to see what breaking the rules really looks like?" she screamed, holding the papers toward the smoker's chimney. "Fine, let's break some rules." The papers caught fire immediately. The flames spread faster than anyone expected, climbing up the pages toward Karen's hands. She dropped them in panic, but not before the fire had reached her fingers. "Karen," Sarah shouted, rushing toward her with a pitcher of water. But Karen stumbled backward, knocking over the side table with the corn, crashing into the decorative garden stones that lined Marcus's flower bed. The flaming papers landed on the wooden deck, spreading small flames across the weathered planks. Marcus grabbed the garden hose and quickly doused the flames, but the damage was done. Scorch marks covered a section of his deck, and Fire Captain Rodriguez arrived first. The captain was Lisa's older brother, a 20-year veteran who'd seen every kind of fire emergency imaginable, but the scene in Marcus's backyard clearly puzzled him. "Well, this is a first," he said, surveying the scorch marks on the deck and the scattered ashes of burned papers. "Usually when I get called to a barbecue fire, it's because someone left the grill unattended, not because someone decided to torch documents next to the house." Karen froze mid-step. "Captain Rodriguez, I can explain. I'm sure you can. Mrs. Whitmore." "That's right. Mrs. Whitmore here lit some papers on fire and dropped them on my deck when the flames got too close to her hands." Captain Rodriguez examined the burn marks, taking photos with his department-tissued tablet. "These papers, what were they?" "HOA bylaws," Tom Rodriguez said. "She was trying to make some kind of point," Sarah explained. She grabbed the papers and held them toward the smoker until they caught fire. Captain Rodriguez looked at Karen with the expression of someone trying to solve a particularly confusing puzzle. "Mrs. Whitmore, is that accurate?" Karen's voice was barely above a whisper. It was an accident. Ma'am, lighting papers on fire next to someone's house isn't generally considered accidental." The police cruiser arrived before Karen could respond, and Officer Janet Mills emerged with the weary expression of someone who'd been dealing with neighborhood disputes for far too long. "Arson, property damage to the deck, minor burns to the suspect." "Suspect? I'm not a suspect. I'm the victim here." Officer Mills pulled out her notepad. "Victim of what, ma'am?" "Harassment. Persecution. I came here in my official capacity as board president to address the violations, and they all ganged up on me." Karen's mouth opened and closed several times before she managed. Officer Mills exchanged a look with Captain Rodriguez, a visual aid that resulted in property damage and you suffering burns to your hands. The burns were accidental, but the fire wasn't. "Look, the important thing is that this man is hosting illegal gatherings and operating dangerous equipment without proper permits." Marcus stepped forward. "Officer Mills, I'd like to show you something." He led her to his security monitor, was mounted just inside the sliding glass door. "I have cameras covering the entire backyard," she said. "I want to see my lawyer," Karen said suddenly. "That's your right, ma'am. But first, I need to understand what happened here." Into the backyard, wave her clipboard around, and make increasingly wild accusations. The audio was crystal clear. "Show me the regulation that says I can't barbecue in my own yard." Marcus's voice came through the speaker. Section 4.7 of the HOA bylaws clearly states that no open flames or combustible materials are permitted, ... "Mrs. Whitmore, these sections you're citing they actually exist. Of course they exist. I'm reading directly from the bylaws, but when Mr. Chen asked you to show him the regulations, you refused. I don't have to prove anything to him. I'm the board president." Officer Mills looked at Mike Patel. "You're an attorney, correct?" "That's right. I've reviewed the actual Willowbrook HOA bylaws multiple times. The sections she's citing are completely fabricated." Karen's face flushed. "That's a lie. I have the authority, actually." "You don't," Mike interrupted. "I did some research after your last harassment campaign. There is no active Willowbrook HOA board. The last legitimate board dissolved in 2019 when Mrs. Patterson moved to Florida and Bob Stevens resigned. No new board was elected. No meetings were held. You simply declared yourself president and started issuing fake citations." Officer Mills made notes. "So Mrs. Whitmore has no legal authority to enforce HOA regulations. She has no legal authority at all," Karen shouted. "I collected legitimate fines for legitimate violations." "Show us the bank records," Tom Rodriguez challenged. Officer Mills continued the video. They watched Karen grow increasingly agitated as the neighbors challenged her authority, culminating in her grabbing the papers and deliberately holding them toward the smoker. The camera captured everything. Karen lighting the papers, the flames spreading to her hands, her panicked expression as she dropped the burning documents onto Marcus's deck. "Well," Officer Mills said when the video ended, "that's about as clear-cut as it gets." Captain Rodriguez was examining Karen's burned fingers. "I'm going to call an ambulance." "I don't need an ambulance." The ambulance arrived as Officer Mills was taking statements from the witnesses. Each neighbor provided consistent accounts of Karen's behavior, both today and over the past months. Tom Rodriguez pulled out his phone and showed pictures of the fake citation Karen had issued him for his non-compliant mailbox. Lisa showed the threatening letter about her children playing too loudly, inventing violations, issuing fake fines, threatening liens, and legal action. It's systematic fraud. Officer Mills looked at the growing pile of evidence. Mrs. Whitmore, I'm going to need you to come down to the station for questioning. I'm not answering any questions without my lawyer. That's your right. Collecting money under false pretenses. Did you think we wouldn't figure it out? As the paramedics finished bandaging Karen's hands, Officer Mills read her rights. Cruiserweight, Sarah said suddenly. Officer Mills, there's something else. She disappeared into the house and returned with a manila envelope. This came in our mail yesterday. It's addressed to Marcus, but it's clearly meant for all of us. On fake HOA letterhead, final notice. Violation number 202-4087. Failure to maintain approved landscaping standards. Fine, $500. If not paid within 10 days, a lien will be placed on your property. She was escalating, Marcus realized. This isn't just harassment anymore. She was about to start filing fake liens against our properties. Officer Mills showed the notice to Karen through the cruiser window. Mrs. Whitmore, did you send this? Karen looked at the document, and her face went completely white. That's not. They weren't fraudulent. The violations were real. Officer Mills shook her head. Mrs. Whitmore, you're in serious trouble. As the police cruiser pulled away, Captain Rodriguez finished his report. Mike Patel was already on his phone. Now we contact the district attorney. What Karen's been doing isn't just neighborhood harassment, it's organized fraud against your property titles. How much trouble is she in? Marcus surveyed his scorched deck and thought about all the months of harassment, all the fake citations, all the stress. 3 days later, Marcus was awakened at 5:30 a.m. by the sound of heavy machinery in his driveway. He stumbled to the front window and found a city code enforcement truck parked outside his house, along with a van from Premier Property Inspections, and 2 men in hard hats examining his front yard with clipboards and measuring tapes. What the hell? Sarah mumbled from behind him, tying her bathrobe as she joined him at the window. Marcus threw on clothes and headed outside, where a thin man with a badge was taking photographs of his mailbox. Excuse me, what's going on here? Code enforcement inspection? The man replied without looking up. We received multiple complaints about violations on this property. I'm Inspector Davidson. What kind of violations? Illegal structures, unpermitted electrical work, zoning violations, potential health hazards. Davidson consulted his tablet. The complaints are quite extensive. Filed by who? Anonymous tip line. But the complainant provided very detailed documentation. Marcus's blood ran cold. When were these complaints filed? Yesterday afternoon. All 7 of them. Davidson looked up from his tablet. Someone really wants this property investigated, Mr. Chen. Behind Inspector Davidson, the men from Premier Property Inspections were setting up what looked like ground-penetrating radar equipment near Marcus's vegetable garden. One of them was drilling small holes in his lawn. What are they doing to my yard? Checking for unpermitted septic systems, buried fuel tanks, possible environmental contamination. Davidson made more notes. The complaint alleged you might have buried hazardous materials. That's insane. This is a normal suburban house. We'll see. The investigation should take about 6 hours. You'll need to provide access to all structures, including your garage, shed, and that custom smoker in your backyard. Sarah appeared beside Marcus, her face pale. They can't just tear up our property based on anonymous complaints. Actually, ma'am, we can. Code enforcement has broad authority to investigate potential health and safety violations. Davidson's tone was professionally unsympathetic. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to worry about. As if on cue, another van pulled up. Willowbrook Environmental Services. 2 technicians emerged with equipment that looked designed for handling toxic waste. This is harassment, Marcus said. This is due process, Davidson replied, based on credible complaints about serious violations. Marcus pulled out his phone and called Mike Patel. The lawyer answered on the second ring, already sounding wide awake despite the early hour. Mike, they're here. Code enforcement, environmental services, property inspectors. They're treating my house like a Superfund site. Karen's revenge, Mike said grimly. I was afraid of this. She made bail yesterday afternoon. Can they do this? Unfortunately, yes, anonymous complaints trigger mandatory investigations if they allege health and safety issues. The question is, what she told them to get this level of response. By 7 a.m., Marcus's quiet neighborhood looked like a crime scene. Yellow caution tape surrounded his property. Neighbors gathered on the sidewalk, watching as inspectors documented every inch of his house and yard. The men with the ground penetration radar had moved to his backyard, scanning the area around his deck and smoker. Tom Rodriguez approached the tape. Marcus, what's happening? Karen happened. She filed complaints claiming, I have environmental hazards buried in my yard. That's crazy, Inspector Davidson overheard. Sir, are you a neighbor? I live right there, Tom pointed to his house. Have you noticed any unusual odors, discolored water, or dead vegetation around this property? Oh no, this is one of the nicest yards on the street. Davidson made a note. What about excessive noise, smoke, or other disturbances? The only disturbance around here was Karen Whitmore harassing everyone until she got arrested for arson. Davidson's pen stopped. Moving arson. 3 days ago, she set fire to papers on Marcus's deck, caused property damage, got arrested. I see Davidson's expression shifted slightly. And this, Mrs. Whitmore would, she have reason to file complaints against this property. She'd have reason to. File fake complaints? Tom said pointedly. She's been making up HOA violations for months, trying to extort money from neighbors. Davidson was quiet for a moment, then walked over to consult with the environmental technicians. Marcus watched as their conversation grew increasingly animated, with Davidson pointing at his tablet and the technicians shaking their heads. Mike Patel arrived 40 minutes later, carrying a thick folder of documents. I brought copies of everything from Karen's arrest, plus the real HOA bylaws, plus documentation of all her previous fake citations. Will that help? It should. The question is, how much damage she's already done. They found Inspector Davidson near the front door, looking increasingly frustrated as he compared his tablet to the actual conditions of Marcus's property. Every alleged violation was proving to be fiction. The unpermitted electrical work was standard code-compliant wiring. The illegal structures were a legal installed deck and a detached garage that had been there for 20 years. The environmental hazards were turning up as nothing more than a well-maintained vegetable garden. Inspector Davidson. Mike approached with his lawyer voice. I'm Mike Patel, representing Mr. Chen. I have some information that might be relevant to your investigation. Davidson looked relieved to see an attorney. Mr. Patel, I have to say, these complaints aren't matching what we're finding on the property. That's because they were filed by someone with a pattern of making false reports. Mike handed him the folder. Karen Whitmore was arrested 3 days ago for arson on this property. She's been running a fake HOA scam for over a year, issuing fraudulent violations and collecting illegal fines from neighbors. Davidson flipped through the police reports, the fake citations, the documentation of Karen's arrest. His expression grew darker with each page. Are you telling me someone with a criminal record for filing false reports just triggered a full code enforcement investigation? That's exactly what I'm telling you. And these complaints, Davidson scrolled through his tablet, 7 different violations, all filed within a 2-hour window yesterday afternoon. All anonymous, but with suspiciously detailed knowledge of the property. ... All fake, Mike confirmed. Else she's done. Inspector Davidson closed his folder with a snap. Gentlemen, I owe you an apology, and Mrs. Whitmore owes the city a significant fine for filing false reports with code enforcement. By noon, the invasion was over. The environmental technicians packed up their equipment, having found nothing more hazardous than tomatoes and bell peppers. The property inspectors confirmed that every structure was legally built and properly maintained. Inspector Davidson issued a formal report stating that all 7 complaints were unfounded and apparently malicious, but the damage was already done. Marcus's yard looked like a war zone, with holes from the soil, testing and tire tracks from the heavy equipment. His neighbors had spent the morning watching their street turn into a circus, and somewhere across town Karen was probably congratulating herself on her successful revenge. She's not done, Mike warned, as they surveyed the destruction. This was just the opening move. He was right. That afternoon, Marcus received a call from his homeowner's insurance company. Someone had filed a claim alleging that smoke damage from his illegal barbecue operation had damaged neighboring properties. The insurance investigator wanted to schedule an immediate site visit. An hour later, Sarah got a call from the health department. Anonymous complaints had been filed claiming their unlicensed food service operation was creating health hazards for the neighborhood. A health inspector would arrive tomorrow morning. By evening, Marcus had received calls from the fire department. Anonymous report of unsafe fire hazards. Animal control complaint about dangerous dogs, despite not owning any pets. And the city planning department allegation of unpermitted business operation in residential zone. "She's trying to destroy us," Sarah said, scrolling through the growing list of fake complaints on Marcus's phone. "She's trying to bankrupt us," Marcus corrected. "Each one of these investigations costs us time, money, and stress. Even when they prove the complaints are false, we still pay the price." Mike was already working on a solution. "I'm filing for an emergency restraining order. This is systematic harassment, and we have documentation of the pattern. Judge Morrison owes me a favor." But even as Mike made calls to the courthouse, Marcus's phone kept ringing. The city attorney's office wanted to discuss zoning violations. The county assessor was investigating unpermitted property improvements that might affect his tax assessment. Someone had even called the postal service, claiming he was operating an illegal mail forwarding business. "How is she doing this?" Sarah asked. "Phone calls," Mike explained. "She's probably sitting at home with a list of every city department calling in anonymous complaints. Each department has to investigate, regardless of the source. Can't they see they're all coming from the same person? Not if she's using different names, different phone numbers, different complaint types. She's probably been planning this." For days, Marcus sank into his chair, exhausted from a day of explaining to various officials that his suburban home was not, in fact, an environment. The next morning brought an eerie calm to Marcus's street. No citation notices appeared in his mailbox. Marcus was drinking coffee on his repaired deck when Mike Patel appeared at his back gate, carrying a briefcase and wearing the expression of someone who'd been up all night. "We need to talk," Mike said without preamble. "Karen made another mistake, a big one." "What now?" Mike opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. The phone tap paid off. She's been busy since yesterday afternoon, 30-7 phone calls to city departments, each one filing a different complaint against you or your neighbors. 37, that's just yesterday. Detective Morrison estimates she's made over 200 false reports in the past week alone. Call number 23, made to the city planning department at 3:47 p.m. yesterday. Marcus scanned the page, his eyes widening as he read Karen's recorded words. "This is Linda Patterson calling about the illegal business operation at 425 Maple Street. As president of the Willowbrook HOA, I have authority to ensure compliance with community standards." She claimed to be Linda Patterson. Gets better. Call number 31, made to the health department. "This is Margaret Henderson, concerned neighbor. Call number 35 to the fire department. This is Susan Walsh from the property management company." Marcus looked up from the transcript. She impersonated multiple people. For months, that's identity theft. That's a federal crime. Before Marcus could respond, Sarah burst through the sliding door, her face flushed with excitement. "Marcus! Mike!" She thrust her phone toward them, showing a local news website. The headline read, "Local woman arrested for elaborate Axcom neighbors speak out." Channel 7 picked up the story, Sarah explained breathlessly. Mike scrolled through the article, his expression shifting from satisfaction to concern. This could be a problem. Why, the whole neighborhood will finally know what she's been doing. As if summoned by their conversation, Marcus's phone rang. Marcus accepted the call and put it on. Speaker. "Hello, Karen, you bastard." Her voice was raw with rage and exhaustion. "You called the media. You're trying to humiliate me. You? We're trying to control people. I was trying to help people, and this is how you repay me, by destroying my reputation, by turning everyone against me. You destroyed your own reputation when you started committing crimes." Karen's laugh was bitter and unhinged. "Crimes? You want to see crimes? I'll show you what real crimes look like." The line went dead again, but this time Mike looked genuinely worried. "She's escalating beyond harassment now," he said. Detective Morrison called 20 minutes later. "Mr. Chen, we have a problem. Karen Whitmore just purchased $500 worth of gasoline from 3 different gas stations, cash transactions, multiple containers. What does that mean? Combined with her threatening phone calls and her pattern of fire-related violence, we think she might be planning something serious. We're sending patrol cars to your neighborhood immediately. You think she's going to try to burn down my house? We think she's planning something, and given her history, fire is a real possibility. I need you and your family to leave your house immediately. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. For how long? Until we locate her and assess the threat level. Within 30 minutes, the entire Chen family was packed into Mike Patel's car, watching their house disappear in the rearview mirror. Behind them, police cruisers were setting up a perimeter around their neighborhood. Ahead of them lay an uncertain number of days in a hotel. Of his bed, scrolling through increasingly dramatic news coverage of Karen's arrest and the spreading story of her fake HOA scam. The story had indeed gone viral, with social media users sharing their own horror stories about nightmare neighbors and HOA abuse. Sarah was on her laptop, reading comment threads. People are calling her BBQ Karen now. The video of her setting the papers on fire has been viewed 2 million times. Great, Marcus said glumly. Our lives are entertainment now. Mike knocked on the adjoining door, then entered without waiting for permission. His phone was pressed to his ear, and his expression was grim. I understand, he was saying. He hung up and turned to Marcus. They found her where? In your backyard, Marcus shot to his feet. When the police arrived, she was standing next to your smoker with a gas can, trying to light a flare. Jesus Christ. They arrested her before she could do any damage, but Marcus, ... Mike paused. She had detailed plans, maps of your house, your neighbors' houses, escape routes. This wasn't a crime of passion. She'd been planning this for days, plans to burn down our house, plans to burn down the entire block. The hotel room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Sarah closed her laptop with shaking. Hans Marcus sank back onto the bed, overwhelmed by the realization of how close they'd come to losing everything. The good news, Mike continued, is that this seals her fate completely. Attempted arson, breaking and entering, terrorist threats, identity theft, fraud. She's looking at 25 to life, and the bad news. The media circus is going to get worse before it gets better. CNN wants to interview you. The Today Show called my office. Netflix is reportedly interested in the story. Marcus put his head in his hands. I just wanted to have a barbecue in my own backyard. 3 days later, they were finally allowed to return home. Their street looked like a movie set, with news vans parked along the curb and reporters doing live broadcasts from their front lawn. The house itself was undamaged, but yellow police tape still surrounded the backyard where Karen had been arrested. We found something else you should know about, she said, handing Marcus a manila folder. When we searched Karen's house, we discovered she'd been documenting every neighbor in a 3-block radius. Photos, schedules, personal information, financial records. Marcus opened the folder and found surveillance photos of his own family. Sarah leaving for work, their kids walking to school, Marcus mowing his lawn. Each photo was annotated with times, dates, and notes about their daily routines. The folder also contained bank records, showing that Karen had collected over $15,000 in fake HOA fines from neighbors across the subdivision. Fake legal documents claiming authority she didn't possess. The scope of her fraud was staggering. The prosecutor is calling it one of the most elaborate neighbor harassment schemes they've ever seen. Marcus found himself back on his deck with Sarah and their neighbors. Tom Rodriguez had brought beer. Lisa had made her famous potato salad. The Johnsons contributed burgers for the grill. It felt like a celebration, even though none of them could quite articulate what they were celebrating. Freedom, Mike Patel said when Marcus posed the question. Speaking of fake authority, Tom said, pulling out his phone, I have an update on the real HOA situation. I contacted the state corporate registry and the original HOA management company. Turns out, when the board dissolved in 2019, they never properly transferred authority or dissolved the legal structure. The HOA technically still exists, but with no active board. What does that mean? Sarah asked. It means we can elect a new board if we want, or we can formally dissolve the HOA altogether and be done with it forever. Marcus looked around at his neighbor's people, who'd endured months of harassment, fake citations, and threats from someone who'd appointed herself their ruler. What do you all think? The vote was unanimous. Dissolved the HOA completely. 2 weeks later, Marcus received a call from the prosecutor's office. Karen had AC